how's it going? Hello to the team at St Mungo's High School from a really wet and rainy Glasgow. I've just had to stick the heating on at 20 to 1 in the afternoon, which I don't like to do. Anyway, I'm so glad to be asked to contribute to Creative Careers Week. I'm sorry not to be there in person, but thanks so much for sending questions and I'll do my best to answer them. I guess first of all, my name is Owen Sutcliffe. I am a writer, a musician and a youth worker based in Glasgow, although I come from Stirling. What does a typical working day look like for me? Well, because of the nature of my kind of freelance career, I'm often in different places, whether that is delivering a workshop, so I might be up and out on the train to somewhere to deliver a workshop, or I might be teaching. Monday and Wednesday I teach in Edinburgh, so I work as a writer in residence for the Edinburgh Book Festival, so I'm based at like an alternative high school there. So some days I'm travelling about doing kind of workshops and then interfacing with different organisations. In terms of like a work day for myself at home, I guess, well, I get up, I make a cup of tea and I sit down and I write for a while. For me, that's when I do my best writing, my best kind of creative writing of my own. There's something to do with my brain not quite having woken up yet, I think. And yeah, I don't like to use that early morning kind of energy. I don't like to waste that on emails and other work. I like to try and use that for the bits of writing that I'm working on. So I'll get up, have a cup of tea, write for the morning, have lunch, probably procrastinate a bit, maybe go for a walk, and then in the afternoons I settle down to sort of admin, so sending invoices, basically chasing up money that I'm owed for work I've done, yeah, arranging things with people, yeah, all that sort of stuff. Applying for funding and grants is a big one. For any freelancer in the creative sector, a lot of the job is sniffing out the next bit of work, and a lot of that is to do with where does the money come from. Basically, who can I convince to give me some money to write something. So yeah, very varied weekdays. I might be all over the place doing a variety of stuff, but for a sort of writing work day at home, for me, that's what I'm mostly focused on. My own writing in the morning and then administrative tasks in the afternoon. Okay, love this question. Do you have any writers that inspire you? Well, short answer, yes. I think that for anyone that is interested in, I guess, writing or being a writer, one of the best things that you can do, as well as just doing a lot of writing, is do a lot of reading. It doesn't have to be kind of on the page, it can be audiobooks, or watching films is good as well. But yeah, I do have writers who inspire me. I have lots for different reasons, but I've chosen 3 to talk about very briefly, and I've got examples of their books here. The first is Claire Keegan. Claire Keegan is an Irish writer who means a lot to me, not only for the beauty of her writing, but for the length of her books. Really slim novels, which are very beautifully put together studies of kind of snapshots of a small number of people in their lives. I like little things. I like, you know, I told you I've just finished a novella. These are novellas. These are short books, and it gives me a great sense of hope and encouragement. Not only the strength of her writing, but the fact that these little novels are being published and are being made into films and things. Claire Keegan is a great writer and a big inspiration for me. Mervyn Peake. Now, Mervyn Peake, he is long dead now, but he wrote this trilogy called the Gormenghast trilogy, and this is the first of those 3 books. For me, it's not the way that I write. These are big, epic works of fantasy, but the characters in the Gormenghast trilogy, Gormenghast is like a fictional castle which is filled with kind of crazy characters and storylines and things. It's very gothic, very dark, very beautifully put together, very so rich. This was written in like the 1950s, so it's much less contemporary than Claire Keegan, but it doesn't read that way. I love Mervyn Peake's characters so much. The names, the voices, the way that he brings them to life is really brilliant, and I would highly recommend the Gormenghast trilogy to anyone. Lastly, I love Kazuo Ishiguro. Okay, he has won the Nobel Prize for Literature. He's been around for a while, still writing. This is his most recent novel from I think a few years ago now, maybe 2022 or something. And I love Kazuo Ishiguro for the kind of perfectness, the perfect poise of his writing. Is very, very technically good. The stories are kind of, you know, flawless. They don't have any holes or gaps. For example, you know, this last one I showed you, this is much more put together in big sweeping kind of brush strokes, and it's not about filling all the little tiny gaps and making sure everything fits together perfectly. It's all a big wash of amazing colours and ideas. Kazuo Ishiguro's writing is very tight and very, it's a sort of masterclass in how to put together a really good story. So Kazuo Ishiguro is the third writer of those 3 who is important to me. Okay, when I was in school, did I have lots of opportunities to explore the creative industries? Yes. I think the key thing to say is that I was already interested, okay? So I was already writing, I was already making music in my own time, and so I was reaching out for like English and music, and we were able to meet, and I was interested, and that fueled the teachers, and it was a very, very supportive, encouraging environment. I learned a lot. I remember specifically, for example, I remember one lesson studying the poetry of Carol Ann Duffy. I don't know if you guys know Carol Ann Duffy, but she's been around for ages. She was the poet laureate for a while. She's written a lot of good poetry. And I remember a lesson studying her poems, which I guess might have felt dry and boring, but I had the technique of enjambment explained to me, or enjambment as the French would pronounce it, which is the process of splitting poetic lines. So you take one line, and instead of it being one line, you half it in the middle and you put the next bit on the next line, and that kind of adds new meaning to both lines. And I remember being like that's cool, and I get that. And it was like in Ratatouille. You guys know Ratatouille? When the food critic eats the ratatouille at the end and he's like, fireworks, he's reminded of his childhood and stuff. Like, for me, that was a big moment, because I suddenly understood one of the cool things about poetry, which is how you play with the words on the page. So they were big, there were big, exciting moments for me in terms of my relationship with English in school or music in school. I struggled in school, yeah, definitely with the stuff that I wasn't interested in, and so I didn't have that same sense of support or direction in those other subjects that I found tough. But I'm sure the teachers also felt that, right? Because because you're trying to meet in the middle, and it's really hard with, when you don't. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I felt supported, definitely in the things that I was interested in. But I think the key thing is that I was already doing them, so it was about legitimising my interests. Yeah, it was about school legitimising my interests. Do you feel as though your school supported or encouraged careers in the creative industry? Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, it's all about that. I think it's a lot about individual relationships that you have with teachers and people who can sort of really see what you are interested in, and you can use them for their interests and knowledge and experience, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely I was supported, I was encouraged. I would say, in terms of my memory of it, I feel like I was encouraged more on an individual basis by particular teachers, rather than a sort of school-wide institutional encouragement. Or, to put it another way, it's the individual conversations and the individual championing that you remember, right? But also, the other thing to say is, I think, is that being in school is a really great thing for anyone that wants to be a writer, because you are surrounded by people, and that is the stuff of stories. Even if you don't realise it, by having to negotiate a place where you're surrounded by people, having to navigate like relationships, good and bad, come into contact with different kinds of people, all of that is like a microcosm of what the world is like, right? So in terms of food for stories, like, you're in no better place. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's a bit rambly, but yeah, broadly speaking, I do feel as though school was like a positive step in terms of my writing and my music. Not so much in other areas, but things are complicated. They're never really one easy thing, are they? So like, yeah. That's just my experience of things. So, my first introduction to the creative industries, and first impressions. Well, my mum is a musician and has always been very involved in kind of teaching and community music projects. So I think my first experiences of kind of essentially being paid to do work related to creativity would have been early experiences, I think, in my teens, having a go at teaching, basically. I mean, teaching is a bit broad, but I used to help run like a little kind of band of younger kids at a organisation called Riverside Music Project in Stirling. And I also used to be a sort of stand-in flute and whistle tutor for the Fèis, which is a kind of movement, a musical organisation which celebrates kind of Gaelic and traditional Scottish music. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Fèis or participated in the Fèis. Anyway, so yeah, I had a couple of early experiences teaching, and I'm sure that they kind of have influenced the fact that I've gone on to do that as I've got older. In terms of my own creativity, I've always written songs and sort of poems, I think. Come from a very musical household, so I think that was a big part of it. One of the things I'm really grateful to my parents for is really for always making me feel as though my creative urges and impulses, the things that I wanted to make, were a legitimate career, were a legitimate way to spend my time. And that is a really important message, I feel, that I feel very fortunate to have been given. So I think in some way or other I've always been kind of driving towards a career in the creative industries. Was this what I always wanted to do? I think so. Other things have been important to me. So I used to play cricket quite seriously. I don't know if there's any cricket players at St Mungo's. There's not many in Scotland. None of my friends play cricket. But yeah, I used to like, so maybe at some point I wanted to be a cricketer, I'm not sure. Really, if I'm honest, I think some version of a job in the creative industries is all I've ever wanted to do. And I've tried various kind of ways of doing that, and I've now settled into a bit of a pattern as a freelancer, a freelance writer mostly. So, as a writer, what is the piece of work that I'm most proud of? It's a tough one, that one, because I'm proud of things for different reasons. So, for example, I'm proud of Oran, which is the play that I wrote a couple of years ago, which is, you know, touring at the moment. And crucially for me, was published as a book. So it's the first time I've had a sort of book of my writing published by a major publisher, which is really nice. It was a big achievement for me. So I'm proud of that because of, you know, the awards that show won for its publication and all that sort of thing. But in a more subtle way, and maybe like a quieter way, I'm proud of bits of writing that maybe haven't been published yet or haven't kind of made it to the stage yet, but I'm proud of them because I have a sort of quiet, I guess, a sense that they are good bits of work. And I think that's really, really important if you are a sort of creative person, if you're making things, whether you're doing it for a job or not. One of the most important kind of barometers, right, or ways that you can measure how effective you're being in your work is how you feel about it, right? Your own relationship to your own work is important, and sometimes we need other people to kind of give us a second opinion. Sometimes, you know, editors become very important, proofreaders, you know, other people's advice and opinions become important. But I think being able to listen to yourself and kind of trust your gut on things is a really important instinct and tells us a lot about the bits of work that are worth pursuing. So, yes, I'm really proud of Oran for its touring and its awards and its publication. I'm really proud of this novella that I've just finished writing. So a novel is, like, I'm sure everyone knows what a novel is. A novel is kind of 60,000 words plus, so it's like a bigger piece of writing. A novella is usually shorter, maybe between anything between about 10,000-15,000 words and about 30,000 or 40,000 words. So it's like a slim novel. And I have a novella which I'm really proud of, partly because of the fact that it is, you know, it's a big, comparatively big piece of work for me. It's about 40,000 words. But also because I'm proud of the story, and I really hope that it gets published. I'm currently in the long, slightly tedious, slightly challenging process of trying to get it published. So yeah, proud of different things for different reasons, but those two are definitely up there. Okay, this is a really good question, this one. As a writer, what or who else do you need to think about or work with when creating material? I would say that it depends a lot on what the material is that you are creating, right? If you have been commissioned to write something for, you know, say you're commissioned to write a play, it might be that the commission is very, very open and they're saying, we would like you to write something for us, we don't mind what it is, off you go. In which case, you don't really have to kind of, you don't really need that much to do with anyone else in that process, or at least in the early stages of that process. You can kind of lock yourself in your room or go to cafes or however you write best and get to work. It might be that it's a much more specific commission, so you're asked to write a story which directly references either other material, so you might have to spend time in a library talking to librarians or other kinds of interviewing, or it might be that you are writing, I guess, as part of a team, or there's very specific research to be done. So in terms of that, yes, you are working with other people from the ground up. It really depends on what you're writing and also how that piece of writing has come about. If we're talking about theatre is highly, highly collaborative. So, for Oren, for example, the initial commission was to write a modern adaptation of Orpheus and Eurydice, and that was it. Okay, so I was really free to go off and do that however I chose. However, as soon as you kind of bring in a first draft in the process of theatre making, from then on, it's very, very collaborative. So you're working with actors, director, producer. Quite soon after that, there are sort of costume and set designers involved. So it's almost like from the moment you show your first draft, it becomes very collaborative, and you're working with lots of other people and their opinions, and it becomes much more like a group endeavour. So one of the big things that I have learned over the past few years is to not show anyone anything until you're really, until you have kind of scrutinised it yourself and you're happy to share it. Because as soon as you share the things that you are writing with other people, they will bring their own opinions in, and it is a beautiful thing, that collaboration, but it becomes something new. It's not so personal and solo as the initial writing was. It becomes something new. Theoretically, on the other hand of it, if you're writing a novel or a novella or short stories or poetry or anything like that that you're doing by yourself for its own sake, you don't have to collaborate with anyone if you don't want to. There are no rules, not really. The only rules are how you establish some kind of way to get the work done, because famously, thinking about writing is not the same as sitting down and writing. It's a bit like homework. It's like you kind of have to just sit down in the chair and get it done. I have written loads and loads and loads of books in my head, but I've only actually written 2 or 3 long things, because it takes time and hard work, and it takes sitting down in the chair and getting it done. So anyway, I sort of rambled a wee bit there, but broadly speaking, well, you need to collaborate with, if it's theatre, you need to collaborate with lots of other people in the making of it. If it's other sorts of writing, you don't have to collaborate with anyone unless you want to, up until the point where you might have an agent or an editor, I guess, reading it. Who else you need to think about? Well, all depends again on the subject matter of what you're writing, but it might be the case that you're writing about real people, real events, or you're writing a fictionalized version of real people and real events, in which case you absolutely have to think about other people a lot. And the last thing I'll say on this is, like, it's a very strange thing to be in your little protected world, writing about whatever you want to write about, and then suddenly you're showing it to people who have, it's out in the big world, and people have their own opinions on it, and that is a very that can be a complicated thing. Okay, what do I find most difficult about my job? I think first and foremost, I touched on it earlier, it's really hard work to be a writer. It's like having a load of homework. You've got to sit down, motivate yourself. There's no boss standing over you saying, do this, do that. If you don't do that, You know, you have to motivate yourself, you have to be disciplined, you have to be prepared to sit down and work. There's no two ways about it. And I find that hard. I think partly, I talked earlier about the collaborative nature of theatre, and I think that's why I enjoy writing for theatre, is because I come from a background of playing in bands and working collaboratively with people. Towards the making of a thing, right? And theatre, you get to do that even as the writer. You're still, like I said earlier, you're still working with directors and actors and costume and set designers and all this kind of stuff. I think, yeah, the thing I find hardest or most challenging about the writing side of my job is just discipline and sitting down and not getting distracted by my phone or not doing all sorts of other things, you know. That is hard. But again, there's no two ways about it. You just have to do it. And you do it, and it feels rubbish, and then suddenly you've written a thing, and then it feels great. I think that's not the case for everyone. Some people enjoy getting lost in it, but for me, I find that difficult. I don't always find writing comes easily. I have to work at it. I guess, to be a bit cheeky and sneak in a second thing that's difficult, the second most difficult thing is finding money, is finding work. You know, it's not easy to get paid to write, particularly at the beginning. And so that's where funding and grants come into play. Studying, like college and uni and stuff, is an option as well, in terms of having access to kind of financially supported ways of improving your writing. Like, if the hardest thing for me about writing is the discipline of sitting down and doing it, the second hardest thing is finding work and trying to stay confident when there's a dry patch. Like at the moment, for example, you know, I'm talking to you guys now. I have like my teaching work, I have workshops and stuff, but I'm in a process where I don't actually have anything under commission at the moment. So what I'm doing is I'm having lots of meetings with theatres, and I'm sending out my novella to lots of agents and all this kind of stuff. But I'm slightly in limbo at the moment, and it doesn't feel great because you don't really know where the next I guess kind of boost is going to come from. But that's just the way of it. That's the reality of a career in the creative industries, and we just have to take that one on the chin, because more often than not, it's a compulsion. Those of us who work in the creative industries, we do it because we have always done it, and are the sort of people, like, I would be writing anyway, and so I'm really glad to try and make it my job. But yeah, that is tricky. You just have to stay confident and just accept it. And hopefully everything will be alright in the end. If you sit in the chair, make some good work, get out and meet people, apply for funding, all of that stuff, hopefully things come good. Okay, last question. Do you have any advice for young folk looking to pursue a career in the creative industries? Well, I mean, maybe you shouldn't listen to me, but my advice would be, first of all, to try and practice the thing, you know, do a lot of it and do it well. Like, if you're interested in being a writer, like I said, write a lot, read a lot. You definitely have to work on the thing, and there's no getting around that. Some of that is fun, some of it, as I say, is hard work. But if you're going to make a career out of something, like sometime when I was younger, and still some, you know, it feels really nice to write when you are feeling, you know, when I'm feeling sad, I've got lots to write about. If I'm feeling particular ways, sometimes the writing comes easily, and that feels really nice, and it's sort of cathartic, it makes you feel better. But if you're going to do this for a job, you need to be prepared and able to write and under other circumstances, when the mood doesn't take you. You know what I mean? When you don't have that, oh, inspiration, I'm inspired and now I'm writing. You have to be prepared to sit down at your desk on a grey and rainy day and just kind of get to work. So I think, yeah, first piece of advice is just try and do the thing, practice it and do it well. Second is like find other people who are interested in the same stuff as you. Like community is everything. It's almost more important than the first one, you know what I mean? It's almost more important than the actual work. It's like having a network of people around you. Not only because it's really important to have friends and it's really important to be able to have conversations with people who understand what you're talking about and all that kind of stuff, but also because as you get older, actually a lot of work is going to come from those circles. For me, I would say about 75-80% of my work, the work opportunities that I get, come from people that I've met doing different things that are broadly related to you know, writing or teaching. So, you know, advice number one, do the thing and try and enjoy doing it if you can, and just by doing it a lot you'll get better. And number two, meet people, make friends with people, introduce yourself to people, go to things, find a community, because that's where you'll get support, that's where you'll get work. And yeah, those two things are really important. And actually, I will mention again, last thing, look out for funding opportunities, grants, competitions. Competitions are a funny one because you can spend a lot of time writing things for competitions and applying, and it can be a bit demoralising if you don't get in. But remember, these things are really oversubscribed. Lots and lots of people apply to competitions and things. I still think they're useful just by giving you deadlines and giving you reasons to finish things off and submit them. But yeah, applying for funding and grants and just generally being prepared to send your writing out into the world. That's it. Yeah, that's what I'd say. So to summarise, number one, do the thing. Number two, find a community. And number three, be prepared to reach out, look for opportunities and send your writing out into the world. Yeah. So that's me. Sorry if I have rambled at all. Sorry I can't be there in person with you guys. Again, I would have loved to meet you and have these chats in the flesh. But yeah, thanks so much for inviting me, and all the best with everything you're up to. If you're writing, whatever you're up to, if you're making art, if you're into science or maths, whatever it is you're interested in, just try and enjoy it and stick with your pals. Do you know what I mean? And all the best. Have a great Christmas. And yeah, all the best. Bye.